So, I'm Tim. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. Because I'm one, I'm the other. That's just me. May not be true for anyone else, but it's true for me. I've been sober and clean since the 24th of July 1993. Thank you, Fran, for asking me to speak today. Uh, I happen to know a relative of Fran, who I've known for many years. So in recovery, I hope that's not saying too much. Um, Before I get on to the topic of control, I think it's as well to say a few general things about addiction and recovery, particularly as I'm aware there may be people who are in their first days or weeks or months, or even people who've been around longer but are not clear about certain things. I think clarity is very helpful. And my addiction is very simple, in fact. It felt very complicated at the time. Um, my drinking and everything else started in the mid-80s, and as I say, carried on till 1993. And what I learnt over those several years is that if I'm using anything at all, and frankly, that also includes certain behaviours other than substances, but maybe, I had to get to that later on. Certainly, it doesn't matter what the substance is, one substance, it triggers all of the others. It's a little bit like a forest fire. It doesn't matter whether it is a spark which causes the first flame to catch on a bush, or if it's a discarded um, match or a chemical fire or someone lighting it on purpose, or sunlight passing through glass and concentrating it and causing the first flame. What causes the first flame is neither here nor there. Once the first flame has started, the fire propagates, jumps from bush to bush, from tree to tree, and the whole thing is going to get burned down. It doesn't matter whether the fire starts right at the middle or on the edge. The result will be the same. Everything gets burned down. This was a very slow lesson to learn, but learning that was incredibly important because we talk about the insanity of having the first drink or drug. It's only insane to have the first drink or drug if, when I have the first drink or drug, it starts a fire which I cannot put out and which no one else can put out. It's always very striking in the summer when all of the news stories start coming in about forest fires, these hundreds of firefighters, and what ends up putting the thing out is a change of wind direction and a spot of rain. There's not a lot that can be done. There's a bit of damage limitation, but a lot of these things, you just have to wait for nature to take its course. And it's exactly the same with my addiction. When I start off again, I can't stop. And I don't just mean during the course of that evening. I don't just mean I'm going to go off on a little bender this evening or a little bender for a few days. It's I go into a completely different frame of mind. And within that frame of mind, I'm not interested in being sober. I don't care. That's the whole point. Or even if I care, caring has absolutely no effect. I'm brought out of that state by a power greater than myself. My first experience of a power greater than myself was before I got into recovery, because it was the thing which got me into recovery. It wasn't common sense. It wasn't a realization in the sense of carefully thinking it through and deciding, I think I'm going to join a 12-step fellowship. That seems a reasonable and rational thing to do. Because the evidence had been stacked up for years, and two and two was not making four, and suddenly two and two was made for me, and I found myself in a meeting. So the two elements of my addiction. First one, if I start, I don't know where it's going to go, so I better never start. However, left to my own devices, I'm going to start. Why? I think one of the aspects of being an addict is that part of my brain is now hardwired, is now programmed to periodically to suggest to me that a drink or a drug is a good idea. It's just gonna come out of the woodwork. Mercifully, over the last 31 years, the frequency with which that thought occurs has diminished. It's very rare for that thought to now occur. And when it occurs, which it does, when it occurs, it tends to be weak and puny and pathetic and there's no fear attached to it. It's just obviously absurd. But it's there. And it's not going to go anywhere. And the occurrence of this thought, uh, it's not because I'm having a bad day. Usually when I'm having a bad day, I'm so preoccupied with the bad day, I'm not thinking about anything else. It typically arises when I'm having a perfectly normal day, when my mind is wandering, when things are nice. For me to drink again, or to take a drug, or to do any of those other things would not be because of my emotions or anything going on in my life. It will be two things. The thought occurs. I have no power over that. Secondly, I obey the thought because I'm in the habit of obeying my own thoughts. The whole of recovery for me is about giving me a system to live by, um, uh, due to which I do not need to obey my own thoughts because I have something else to obey instead, which is the direction of a higher power. And that direction of a higher power comes through a number of uh, channels. The first one is the 12-step program, which gives an awful lot of guidance on specific things to do in specific um, places at specific times. And the 12 steps is not just the 200 words or so, which are comprised in the text of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 on the scroll that you see in the wall. It says in the AA Big Book that the 12 steps summarize the program. In other words, that's just a little way of remembering the basic headings of the steps, but the full content of the steps is everything in the book up to page 164, which means there's a lot of guidance there. That's going to keep me very busy and has continued to keep me very busy for over 3 decades. There's the program, there's the principles of the program. So lots of ideas in that book are immensely useful in other areas. For instance, it says about the wife of the alcoholic husband, it is useless to argue. Well, that's a very good principle of general application. It's not just if one has an alcoholic spouse. There's no end to the situations in which it is the case that it is no use to argue. There are plenty of principles I can follow there. The third thing is the people. And I think it's helpfully said that recovery works because we're not all mad on the same day. And if I trust other people, uh, who are not emotionally involved in my situation over my own fevered ideas, then I'll be all right. The fourth thing is prayer, where I directly say to God, how should I look at this situation? What should I do in this situation? And listen for the answer and then get on with it. That gives me plenty to do so that the random stray thoughts that come into my mind, which used to be what I drove the bus by, that was my satellite navigation system. Where shall I go next? I know. I'll see what's in my mind. Oh, my mind's saying have a drink. Let's go and have a drink. Very simple. I did what my mind told me. This is what self-will is. This is what having oneself as one's own higher power is. That had to go because I was going to carry on uh, killing myself with drink and drugs if that was the case. Um, and so today, what does my life look like? Lots of meetings, morning meditation with other people in recovery, home group. I go to some other meetings as well. Um, page 19, home, occupation and affairs. I work hard and I'm diligent in those areas, and that provides the demonstration in the rest of my life that the program works, that it is a design for living which works in rough going and in good going. Um, I redo the first 9 steps, certainly re-look at them and do a proper step 4 once a quarter, and that clears out the cobwebs. For years, I tried just getting by on steps 10, 11, and 12 and not looking at the first 9 steps again. It was a disaster because when I do that, in step 10, I'll only catch the things which are emotionally very distressing or problems which have exploded acutely. That's a tenth, a hundredth of all the stuff that's actually going on in my life. Most of the stuff that goes wrong is a gradual, slow drift into materialism and negligence and self-centeredness and complacency and pride and vanity and arrogance and mean-spiritedness and all of the other character defects that I have. They won't necessarily cause an acute problem or uh, a terrible emotional condition which requires immediate attention in step 10, I just won't notice, which is why I do a proper step 4 review once a quarter, get everything out onto the table. And I sponsor far more people than I'm entirely comfortable with, and that keeps me out of trouble because there is a lot. I'm in London, and there are a lot of ways. I mean, I know there are a lot of ways to get into trouble in Wales, but boy, are there a lot of ways to get into trouble in London. You know, you've got several million people within an hour's travel. That gives you options. Sponsoring lots of people keeps me off the streets and out of other people's lives, which is a very good thing. Topic of control, fascinating. I'd love to know who chose that and why. And it's I've never come across it. I don't think I've ever been in a meeting where control is the topic. And it's opposite now. Just in case anyone is unsure about this, control is not one of the tools of the program. I take it to mean here a defect that I'm to avoid. But there's a little bit of a nuance before I get on to control as a character defect. Um, I've heard people say that in step 1 it says our lives had become unmanageable, and the person would go on to say, and it doesn't say anywhere that our lives ever become manageable. My life is still unmanageable today. Um, when I'm the manager of my life, things are terrible. Uh, that's not been my experience. The ideal is to have a well-ordered, orderly life where I'm going to use a bad word, where shit gets done and shit gets done really efficiently, and then I've got time to have fun as well. Uh, my life is extremely manageable today, and it's extremely well managed. Now, that's not self-will. That's because I've placed the management of my life under the direct direction of God, so that how each how my life as a whole is, as it were, designed, what parts are in there, how those parts relate to each other, what I do at work, what I do at meetings, what I do in a religious sense. How I do those things is governed by the principles of the program and the direction of a higher power. And as a result, I've got a very stress-free life. It's not because things don't happen. There is a lot going on, but my life is very orderly. Now, that's not control in the negative sense. That's just good. That's just frankly good sense. Um, and this boils down to the serenity prayer. uh, I've certainly had major problems in um, trying to bite off more than I can chew in terms of controlling the people around me or attempting to control the people around me, getting very upset about things which are beyond my control. And it's very easy and it can look very humble to say, well, I just let everything go. I just let my higher power do everything. But that's not what the Serenity Prayer says. It says, courage to change the things I can, serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So there is a lot I should be doing. There is a lot which is within my hula hoop. They talk about you stay within your hula hoop and you keep your nose out of other people's business. And within the hula hoop is my beliefs, my thinking, and my behavior. And those three factors, beliefs, thinking, and behavior, that produces my experience of life. That produces the fabric of my life. That produces the emotions of my life. And there's a lot to getting on with there. So one mustn't, I don't think, go from one extreme of trying to be in charge of everything to the other extreme of sitting there like a pudding, waiting for God to do miracles, where God is saying, do you want to get off your arse and actually do something about this? Help me out here. Um, I remember many years ago that this is best summed up with someone I heard uh, elsewhere who said, "You've got to take action to activate your faith. God ain't gonna slide no hot dog under your door." And no hot dog has been slid under my door. I've had to go and get my own hot dogs. God will do for me what I can't do for myself, but won't do for me what I can do for myself. And control is, I think, it's a very simple character defect. It's simply getting the serenity prayer wrong. It's trying to influence or manage or direct things which are other people's business. And this idea, the reason it is a recovery topic is the steps are great on sorting out the basics of my life and my relationship with God, and a few basic things in my relationships with other people, clearing up the mess in step 9. But it's the traditions which are great for how I relate to other people. And in tradition 4, it talks about, my group can do what it wants as long as it doesn't affect another group or the fellowship as a whole. And that's a principle I try to operate in my life. So I'm married. I have another half who will be coming home soon. And I've got my life. He's got his life. And we have a joint area together. He doesn't pry into my life. I don't pry into his. I don't know what his bank balance is. I've never snooped in his Facebook. I don't do any of that shit. It's leave. Friend of mine would write to his sponsors, write emails to his sponsor about his other half, and his sponsor would write back emails with no body in the email, just in the subject line in capitals. Leave him alone. And a lot of people just want to be left alone. Even if they're fucking up, often they'll need to fuck up to learn that they're fucking up. If I get in there and try and cushion the blow to get between them and their consequences, I will be stopping them from having the rock bottom they need to have to take responsibility for their lives. The people I've known who are active alcoholics and addicts, the ones who have who are out there, the ones who've got well are the ones who've got well because everyone let go. Everyone stopped running round them and making them healthy meals and hoovering and doing all of the other things to make their lives comfortable. Because what they were doing was making their lives comfortable within their addiction. Um, so a lot of control doesn't look like directly giving people orders. Control very often looks like uh, being helpful. And a friend of mine says help is the sunny side of control. Don't get your help all over people. Now, of course, step 12 says that we're to help people, but it's under very narrow conditions. It's under the conditions where, if you read chapter 7 in the big book, it's very reticent about telling people what the solution is. It's very reticent about God. It says, if a few pages in, if he happens to ask you about the solution, you tell him. But if he doesn't, stumm, say nothing. If he wants to do something else, say, oh, go and follow your own conscience. There's no attempt to control the situation. And only if someone says, yeah, I totally want a life of the sort that you have, and I'm literally willing to do anything to achieve that, then we're in business. But even then, I'm not in control of anything. The book talks about, in the doctor's opinion, offering and explaining. I can offer the program, I can explain the program, but I can't do the program for other people. I can't give them willingness. And it's very difficult, and I still find it difficult because people are complicated and each person is different, to find exactly at what point does is my helping turning into some form of enabling. And sometimes you swing too far into doing things for people or cajoling them. Sometimes you swing too far back and you're leaving them to drown where you need to be throwing them a bit of uh, a life belt. And those sorts of difficulties are a very good example of why this program, you never have it down pat. Oh, I've got it now. I'm good to go. I've got this. I've got it forever. See ya. Because it's one's constantly learning. I'm learning as much now at 31 years as I did at 15 years or 2 years. I'm coming up to my time limit, so I'm going to stop there. Thanks for listening.